Hey folks, it's Blair here. Today on the Year Ones, we're chatting with Layo Folami. And in her Year One, Layo works as a marketing and social media specialist at Nankind, an organization that provides free supportive care to families affected by cancer. Now, Layo enjoys grounding herself in brand stories and helping brands appeal to their audiences through brand storytelling. And she's especially passionate about creating positive social change, as demonstrated by a year and a half work in the not-for-profit sector since her move to Canada. And prior to that, Layo worked for 4 years agency side in Nigeria before exploring her creative and purpose-driven passions further in Canada. So we have a lot to talk about in our time together. So folks, put aside those distractions. Get ready to think about how some of these insights and tips can help you. And let's welcome Layo by asking that dreaded, tell us about yourself question.
Okay, really happy to be here. So I'm Layo Folami, as you mentioned. I am a marketing and social media specialist at Nankind. And what I do is I help them to create content across their different channels to be able to connect and also raise awareness with their target audiences and then also convert. So I pretty much work with different departments within the organization, but essentially the goal is to help us achieve our marketing goals, essentially.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit more about Nankind. The organization is it's a not-for-profit.
Yes.
And yeah, tell us a bit more about that. Its size, how it's set up, what the marketing group is like there.
Okay. So the organization aims to transform the cancer experience for families through free childcare and support programs. It's a pretty small organization at the moment. We have about 13 staff, but we work with some agencies here and there and like some consultants. But what we what the marketing department comprises of is, well, we say we're marketing and fundraising. So we have the marketing specialist, which is me, and I also work with a communication specialist. She also helps to review the work that I do, especially the work that would be seen by lots more people. And then there's also the fundraising side of it, fundraising and events, who pretty much go out there and help us gather the funds that support the organization. So marketing specifically touches all of the different aspects of the organization. So from the family team who really support those families, and then the volunteer team, and of course the fundraising team, because I'm helping all of them to achieve their different goals. Yeah, so I'm one person that literally everybody in the organization interacts with.
So you work across, you do marketing communications for each one of those groups for their different audiences and different goals.
Yes, essentially. Yes.
That must be, it must be there a lot of things to juggle.
Oh, yes, it surely is. It surely is. And, currently one of the things that we're trying to put in place is a process for marketing specifically, because with that means that there's a lot of conflict, right? So, and it kind of just comes at you. But now what we're trying to implement is like a process whereby, it's like a ticketing system, because everybody wants a piece of me, but you can't have a piece of me at the same time. So we, we're trying to do that and we're seeing how that works. But yeah, it's really fun just interacting with everyone and being such a huge part, which is one of the major things that I wanted in this like next step of my career.
So before it's funny, ask about a typical week, but I have a feeling with all of the different things, this is going to be an interesting answer. But I've worked in a not-for-profit before. And when you're talking about that sort of idea, one of the things that we did, it was almost like we worked ourselves as an internal agency where we had dockets and we worked on the different group would have a brief, come to us. We'd have like a project docket. We had to track our time against it. And that was one of the ways that we worked there across the different clients, because money came, it was like part of it was the back end financials, how the organization worked and whose money was paying for what. But is that the idea that you might be working with there at Nankind as well?
Yes, something very similar. And it wasn't that clear cut until we tried to now implement this process where everyone sort of, yes, gives us a brief about what they really want to achieve, and then we can now allocate our resources towards that. So essentially right now, for instance, the major priorities are fundraising and volunteer teams. So they would come to me and say, okay, we need more volunteers. How can you help us with this? And then it's really up to us, or yeah, to me and the communication specialist, to come up with like engaging ways to be able to attract volunteers for one, and then um, innovative ways to also gather funds, basically support these different like parts of the organization with their goals, because they also are the ones that, like for instance, if they like the volunteer team needs to recruit volunteers, they're the ones that will still pick up the phones and talk to the volunteers. But I'm just going to help them communicate their messages like on social media, or give them the tools that they need. For instance, maybe they need like a brochure, or they need like a flyer for an event. So it's pretty much support, and then they, pick up, the pace and do like the actual work. So I don't know if that completely essentially is what you were trying to describe, but that's kind of how it is here as well.
Do you have a, like, this is getting a bit processed, but it's interesting to dig into, like, is there an annual like marketing calendar, some sort of calendar that you all work towards, so like these are the times when we really need when we typically need more volunteers, or these are our fundraising times? Like, is there a calendar that you can count on that helps sort of air traffic control manage all the pieces?
Yes, so that was like literally the first thing I did when I started the role. Yeah, like create a calendar for all of the different activities and the special moments for each part of the business. So sometimes maybe like there's volunteer week and you want to, that's going to be the priority, or there's child life week, or giving Tuesday, for instance, right? So we have that as a framework, but the thing is that, as you know, with marketing, it's always changing, it's always evolving, you know. And one thing that we know is that we always need funds. So fundraising is always a priority. But the thing is that there are sometimes that it's more needed. Like right now, we are very much focused on fundraising because this is when our annual fundraiser is coming up. It's coming up in October. So all of the planning, all of everything is going into that. All of our resources and time are majorly focused on fundraising. But the thing is that we still need volunteers, because just also because of the outlook of the market right now, there is need for our services. Like our waiting list is very, very large, but we don't have enough volunteers. So volunteer will also always be a priority. So that's something that we have to kind of now, at least like from the second quarter, really, we have to also focus on volunteer marketing as like an always on thing that we're focusing on. So yes, we do have those special times, and where like I would dedicate my time to um vol- putting out the word about the fact that we need volunteers, appreciating our volunteers, but some of the things are sort of always on, to be honest.
For just or the volunteers, just because different organizations might use volunteers in different ways.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that Nankind, it provides support to families who are affected by cancer. Are the volunteers the ones who are providing the support?
Yes.
So they're kind of like the, like, I don't know, the operations people. They're the ones who are actually delivering what you offer.
Exactly, but it's in tandem with the family team. So we also have a team of child life specialists and social workers that also, number one, train the volunteers and then also offer support to the families, like in terms of like coping tools, coping kits. Like they have their own sessions with the families and always checking with families. They're the ones that also do the intake process and then now allocate a volunteer because they need to learn about the family's individual situation so that they can match the volunteers perfectly to the families. So that's their own job. And then they also do the grief and bereavement support. But the volunteers are really the ones that go into the families and they interact with the families much more. They see them on a weekly basis. They offer them the in-home childcare support. And then also with the guidance of the child life specialist, also help to give them those tools that would help them to build resilience.
Is does Nankind support families with is it for parents who are affected by cancer or children who have cancer, or is it both?
It's
And depending on, you sort of adjust it based on
needs
who is, yeah, who I guess who has the need.
Yeah, so it's both. We really the volunteers themselves focus on the kids, the children, but the idea is also offering respite to the parents who are dealing with so the one parent that is dealing with cancer that's affected by the cancer would have to get some time to themselves because they're dealing with their treatments. Sometimes they have to go for appointments, or sometimes they just need to rest without having to juggle everything, right, that comes with being a parent and, being affected by cancer. So the idea is to offer respite to parents, but we focus really on the kids because it's a very traumatic experience potentially a very traumatic experience. And a lot of these children need that support, like in terms of like mental health and just helping them to build those coping skills that would make them into resilient adults and help them grow and thrive, right? So we also offer some interventions to the parents as well. Like there's a mom support group, for instance, and there's like meal care support. But that's why we say families. We say families because we look at the family as a whole. But essentially, most of that, especially the volunteer support, goes to the kids.
And what do you just this is it's a nice, I guess, talk a little bit more about the organization, and anyone who's listening might be interested, um, possibly in volunteering. What sort of uh, things do you look for in a volunteer, make a successful volunteer?
So you need to have a very high level of childcare experience. Like you need to maybe have worked with children for, a very good amount of time, at least like I think it's about 300 hours of childcare support because it's like you're dealing with vulnerable folks, right? So that's one major thing that we look forward to. And then we just do like a vulnerable sector check. But the major thing is having that child care experience and having worked with kids and, wanting to support children that are affected by cancer, just being very motivated by our cause. That's the major thing that we seek in our volunteers. Yes, that childcare support is very big
And
for us.
is it like formal, like they have some sort of like they're an educator or an ECE type of or like type of person, or can it be a parent who's been a parent?
The parent one is a bit tricky. So we get like people that have been like that have done babysitting, for instance, right? Um, like EC is a very very good place that we look at. We want it to be formal for the fact that then you can get references because we also need reference check. That's something that I didn't communicate. So, and if you're just a parent, who is going to be the reference? So it's going to be very hard for us to um, authenticate the experience. So that's why we always look for either people that have volunteered in childcare or people that are working with kids currently in their profession. So yes, it doesn't have to be super formal, but somebody needs to be able to vouch for the fact that you have good experience and you can be left alone with with children, because that's essentially it, right? You'll be alone with the children a lot of times. So yeah, it's
Got it. Okay.
yeah.
Interesting. And it sounds like a great support for families that really need it. So let's bring it back to this idea of the typical week in marketing, whatever that might be. But tell us a little bit more specifically about that marketing. And then you mentioned social media, that marketing and social media work that you do, sort of more the like all day, every day type of stuff. What's the focus there? What does that look like?
Okay, so most of my time typically should be spent creating content for social media. So I create the copies and the visuals that are going to go on our platforms, and then I'll also do all of the analysis that goes into that, like what are the opportunities, what are the trends, and also just engaging our community. Then I also work on any other like marketing related things. So like creating emails, for instance, creating brochures, the design for the brochures that we have, or like maybe any booklets, like a child life specialist might come and say, okay, we need this booklet, maybe like a coping kit. Can you help me create that? So those are the kind of things that I do. It's usually visuals for like events, what we're going to be using with the families, communicating to the volunteers, and then fundraising materials. But a big part of that is digital led. I also work to update the content that goes on the website as well. So yeah, just all the different touch points, but a lot of what I do is around creating content for all of the different departments within the organization.
And is it so it's content marketing, mainly like the owned media channels, website and or sorry, organic, like website and social networks? It doesn't sound like you're doing much in the way of like paid advertising, things like that.
Yeah, so I'm doing a lot of the organic work, but then I also didn't mention that I interface with, because we also have like an agency, like a pro bono agency that helps us with our Google grant. So we have Google search ads, and then we usually do a lot of promotion on Meta as well when we have like specific campaigns that we want to prioritize. So I would typically brief the agency. So I would create the content for them, create the brief and the target audience, and then they will do like the implementation.
So it sounds like a pretty like full scope digital marketing. I use the word generalist in like in a positive way. Like you're doing most of the things digital marketing.
Yes, very generalist role. Like I wear different hats in the organization. Like it's, little things, just anything that has to do with branding. Like even when if it's like a presentation, they will just call me. But it helps me have like that full marketing, robust knowledge and experience, because I'm everywhere. I'm touching all of the touch points. So yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Now, is that something that you were seeking out? Because we talk to folks, there are folks who get really focused in like, say, social media management or community management. And then there's some of this more like generalist marketing, especially on like the client side, which is where you are. Is that something that you actively wanted to do in kind of this step in your career journey?
Interestingly, I was looking for something more specific. So I wanted to do something more specific because I've been working in the agency world, right? And with that, and that's I guess where I got the generalist, um, I don't know, like sort of reputation from, right? Because with agencies, especially the agencies I worked with, I was pretty much doing a lot of roles, but I was an account manager, but the account manager would, we had content creators, for instance, but I would still sometimes create content. I would be able to touch everything, do the digital marketing. So I had all of that knowledge, and I was very interested in creating content. That was like my major aim, like moving to Canada actually. So I wanted to improve on my content marketing skills and then just design skills in general. That's what I was looking for. And also to backtrack a little bit, I worked at Wealthsimple Foundation and I was a community engagement coordinator there. And that involved partnerships, programming, and then marketing. So that one was even more broad. And so I was trying to focus on marketing specifically and then content creation specifically. And this role it has a lot to do with creating content, even though it's content that is going to go on different platforms. So that was where the specialization came in for me. Like when it came to this role, I was saying, okay, fine, I would be able to focus more on creating content and like really build that skill. At least I wouldn't be doing, everything. For instance, I won't be doing the actual promotion. Even though I like that, I wanted to see how it felt to just do one thing and go from there. So I think I'll say where I specialized was when it came to creating more content.
That sounds like, yeah, that's sort of the heart of where you're going. And there's some other stuff, but this is more content marketing focused.
Yes.
So then you started to talk about this, but one of your other year one roles just before Nankind was community engagement at Wealthsimple Foundation.
Yes.
So what did that entail? And you said it was quite broad. So explain that a little bit further for folks.
Okay, so I was basically supporting the partnership and programming team as well as the marketing team. So partnership but the main focus of my role was essentially the partnerships and programming. So that involved helping to recruit volunteers for our financial education webinars that we usually facilitated with our different community partners, and just creating the content that was going to be shared and then training the volunteers. So we did a lot of the mandate was financial education and just education in general through Canada Learning Bond, which is a government grant towards post-secondary education. So I was pretty much supporting that team in helping to recruit volunteers and then just training them to give them everything that they needed to be able to facilitate those programs, both webinars and in person. And then for the marketing side, it was also content creation, but then I also got some more support. So I was doing more of like the analytical side of marketing, which is like looking at what worked and then also helping to deploy the content and essentially community management, which was, engaging the audience, right? Responding to comments, but looking at what the trends were in the market and seeing how we can adapt our content to better serve our communities.
So it's similar-ish to what you're doing now, just different kind of subject matter and
Yes,
operation and everything.
essentially, yes, it really is.
All right. So let's maybe go back to, not go back to, but a question that kind of gets on our mind. What keeps you up at night, or what's on your mind about marketing right now?
I'll say it's like how to grow, like social media, because one platform that I'm always on is our social media channels, especially Instagram, and I'm always thinking about how to grow, especially like for a not-for-profit that is talking about something that is very sensitive like cancer. So I'm looking at what other people are doing a lot and seeing how I can learn and leverage like the key trends in the market. So yeah, I'm very focused on growth and engagement specifically. Like what are people responding to or what are they not responding to and why are they not responding to it so that I can like create something else that probably works and test and optimize. So I'm someone that likes to experiment a lot and like I'm very growth focused. So I'm always looking at what are the new trends in the market.
So for a topic In this case, we're talking about cancer, which is it's a very heavy word. How do you find your inspiration and ideas for these tests that you're doing? Do you look at like other health related organizations, or do you look at sort of at different industries um, for the inspiration? Like how do you find those sort of sparks?
Yeah, it's a mix. I definitely look at other organizations that are speaking to people that are affected by cancer because I want to know how they're communicating and what they're saying. So, for instance, maybe one of those kind of brands would be like Rethink Breast Cancer. They do similar content to what we do. Like they are always putting up stories of people affected by breast cancer. So I might look at something like that, or just other cancer societies, like Canadian Cancer Society, for instance. Or I might also want to see what people that are targeting people in my target audience are doing. So other not for profit or even just other brands in general that are purpose driven, sometimes not even purpose driven. Just I want to see people that are speaking to youth, for instance, and like how are they communicating their messages? Like what are the trends? So, for instance, are a lot of people doing more videos? Are a lot of people focusing more on TikTok, for instance? And then can I leverage that with my own message? So I do like a broad search, like it could be anything, because where I get my inspiration from literally comes from anywhere. And then apart from brands, I also look at like content creators. So now, because of I'm someone that is always checking, like going to like Instagram is where I do a lot of my learning. A lot of my feed is already about content, how to improve your content. Like I look at social media creators that just say how to grow your fan base, for instance. Or yes, so just it could be anything. I get inspiration from a broad range of platforms and brands and stuff.
What sort of, so talking about again a topic that has a lot of emotion attached to it, what sort of like brand voice does Nankind want to or deliver to its audience?
Yes, oh, that's a very good question. We want to be optimistic because we don't want to focus. I mean, we don't want to make people feel so bad when they come to our platform. So we want to encourage them, we want to be warm, we want to be friendly, we want to be that, that I see us like as like a friend that you can confide in, a friend that would always be that shoulder to lean on, even when you feel like you have no one, you can always confide in us. So even the stories that we talk about, they're always more optimistic, about the impact, but about how Nankind just came and just offered a friend indeed, right, for them. So I'll say yes, we're very warm, we're very friendly. Yeah, we will talk about like a few facts, but we're not even going to go too much into the weeds of cancer because we're not, for instance, we're not physicians, right? We have child life specialists. So we will talk about like things that relate to the child life world, for instance, like educate people. So that's another thing. We like to educate as well. And then we give mental health tips. But I think one thing that we really just try to communicate is just our friendliness, our warmth, and compassion.
Yeah, that's what I think the coordinators, once they get there on the ground, that's what they're delivering in real life. So you have to keep it all going through the rest of the chain there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Let's maybe shift gears a little bit. We talked a fair amount about your work in your year one here in Canada, and let's talk about getting to day one. But I want to go back just a little bit before, and what sparked your move to Canada, and then the decision to go from agency side from your time in Nigeria to client side marketing which is where you've spent your time here in Canada. Just tell us a little bit about that sort of big leap journey before we get into some of the more specifics of things here.
Okay, amazing. I wanted to just improve my knowledge about digital marketing specifically. I studied business and management in university. So that is also already really broad. And I'd already decided, okay, I'm going to go into marketing. But when I was in the agency side, I felt like it was really good in terms of building experience in the marketing space. And all of my experience was focused on digital marketing. So I already knew that I was going to do digital marketing specifically. But I I'm the way I'm wired, my brain is wired. I like things. I pick up interest really quickly, right? So I liked so many things that I just wanted to figure out what space I was going to spend the rest of my career in. And I knew that I was very creative, but I was also really analytical. So I said, okay, let me do a digital marketing course, a postgraduate course, right? And that was why I decided to come to Canada. And then and also that was when I also had the pleasure of learning from you, right, in my course, digital marketing course at George Brown College. And that course was very good because number one, it made me realize so much about myself and where I wanted to specialize. I knew that I wanted to do content marketing from just being in that space. Like it also helped me build my brand, like what I wanted to focus more on. Like I knew that I wanted to do more purposeful work, right? And then I I knew that also the data side would come into play, right? So I used the opportunity to just get a foot into just the marketing world in general. And then another great thing about the course was that there was a co-op, right? So that made me have one leg into the work world in Canada, right, and the marketing space. And then that was when I got the job at Wealthsimple Foundation, and then the rest is history. But from that, all of that experience, it's made me realize that number one, I wanted to be really a part of an organization. Like I wanted to be part of the decision making. So you asked about why did I shift from agency to the client side. I wanted to be a huge part of decision making because from the agency side, you can only do so much, right? You will give them your strategies, you give them reports, you implement the campaigns, but at the end of the day, it's still what the client comes to you with that you have to do. And then you never really know what is going on in the organization as much. I mean, you would have your relationships with the brand managers and all of that, but you're not in the organization, you don't know, so you can't see the full picture. But in these new roles that I've been able to work in, I've been able to really see the different things that are affecting the organization on just different levels, both micro and macro. And it's just been wonderful. So I knew that I wanted to just be a huge part of the decision making. And then I also knew that I wanted to create content that was going to deliver on positive change. And then that was what shaped the roles that I went for.
Yeah, I think that's, I spent some time agency side as well. And what you're saying is exactly the reason why I went from agency side to client side. And
Yeah.
it's not to say agency side is bad, but it's like if you really like certain things,
Yes.
especially advertising, a lot of investment goes there and you really want to focus on one thing and really kind of own that, it's great.
Mhm.
But you talk about the big picture and a bit more seeing how the parts fit together, and the way to get that is more on the client side.
Exactly.
So yeah, I totally understand that, that, and it's a good message for folks to start to think about.
Mm.
You can sometimes switch, but
Yes.
having an idea of, do you like, yeah, do you want to really build the brand and work and see all the parts, or do you
Yeah.
want to really go deep on one of those parts and really become an expert in one thing? Is something to think about.
Completely. Completely. I really agree.
So how about, so you mentioned it started with the internship at Wealthsimple. Um, and can you maybe tell us a little bit more, I guess, about your job search journey, maybe to get to the internship, or or to get to Nankind, whichever you think might be more kind of relevant to share with folks.
Okay, so the job fair journey was an interesting one. It's even started. So when I was in George Brown College, I knew that I wanted to do more. So I also got another part-time role in the not-for-profit space. Actually, that was where my not-for-profit journey started from. And it was a social media coordinator role. So it was so specific. It was so social media focused, but it was a short-term role. And I think that really helped me when in terms of finding that co-op, because I will tell you for free that like during the interview, they were really focused on my not for profit experience. So just having that niche kind of set me apart. And I think that kind of prepared me for this role. It, Getting the co op, it was a very long journey. It was way more difficult than getting the part time job for some reason. I don't know. But getting the co op was really, really tasking. In fact, I got my co op like around like almost the end of the semester when a lot of people had already gotten their course, and I was like, I was sort of like getting anxious already, didn't know where I was going to fall. And I just remember seeing, because I was part of the Black Student Success Network at George Brown, and then I saw like two roles that seemed really interesting to me, because when I saw the Wealthsimple one, I said, okay, financial education and not for profit and community engagement. Like it just seemed like something that I really wanted to do, and just be able to really, because I was always interested in production, content production as well. So I felt like I'll be behind the scenes creating the content that goes out. And then that's also where I see that programming part really lending a hand to my content marketing aspirations, because you're still creating content for your programs. So I really had a lot to say about my experience, and I think that was what set me apart and why I got the role. And it was great because it wasn't just like a normal co-op, it was for 1 year. So I was really able to have that Canadian experience, right? Like, and understand myself and where I really wanted to specialize in. And I also had some very great line managers that served as mentors to me and made me realize where I wanted to focus on. So in that time, I started to think that, okay, I wanted to focus more on marketing. I want to create content. But interestingly, I started thinking I would go into market research, because like I've been saying, like I'm very analytical. So I thought, okay, maybe I should start from the beginning. Maybe I should do market research. Maybe I should start from, how they ideate it, and really having those interactions with the communities, because to understand the customer psychology. And I said, okay, fine. I will start applying for roles in customer research and marketing and see what happens. I started talking to people, and because I already had the marketing experience, I knew that it was customer research that was going to be kind of tough to get into. So I talked to people, I understood, what the role entailed. And some people told me that because of my marketing experience, it might also be easy for me. So I should still apply. And that's what I did. I even started a course in customer research. But honestly, like when I was on that search, I just thought, okay, the more of the the attention I was getting and more of the opportunities I was getting still were around marketing. And I still realized I'll be able to create content and I will still be able to do a lot of this market research that I'm very interested in. So why don't I just focus on marketing, which number one, I already have a lot of experience in. Number two, it gives me like a broad perspective, and I would still be able to go along the path that I was interested in. So that was how I found Nankind. And again, my Wealthsimple experience, my not-for-profit experience made me stand out. They were very concerned about what I was doing in Wealthsimple and just all of these synergies. So that was how it went. It was really challenging at those two times, but I think having a niche and being decisive, not like, because at first, like I said, I was going into too many, into more than one area. So just deciding to just pivot and go like focus on marketing was essentially what helped me land my role at the end of the day.
Yeah, it sounds like just highlighting some of the things that you mentioned there, and you talked about the not-for-profit space and leveraging that, and that was one of the things that was attractive to one of the potential employers to get you in the door. And then you still, it sounds like you're very curious, but it still comes back to content, right? And analytics will come with any role. It's a different type when you're doing marketing research. Like it's a really different function. But you mentioned, I feel like not for profit, and then the content piece seemed to be the thread that you, or that foundation that you
Yes,
ultimately built on,
yes,
that helped you get those jobs. Like picking. You needed to decide to sort of make those focuses and focus on that message.
exactly. Exactly.
What was the hardest part of any of the job searches?
Wow, it was definitely the rejection, as a lot of people will say. It's not easy to pick yourself up again when you get rejected. Sometimes you don't even know the reason why. Sometimes you don't even hear back. So it was rejection and thinking, okay, am I even going down the right path? Like, you know, because I keep on getting rejected. And I think it helps to build resilience, but I'm not going to. The major thing for me was just picking myself up after things that, because a lot of the time I was also getting to final stages of interviews where I thought, okay, I did really well. This was what, I really connect with this role and this is just for me. So I just could not understand why I didn't get some certain jobs. But it again helped me to, because I'm a very introspective person. I'm very curious. So after everything, I would always say, okay, what did you do well? What could you have worked on? And I think that's really helped me along the way. But the rejection was very difficult.
Yeah, you actually just read my mind. I was going to ask you, how did you deal with that rejection? So a bit of it sounded like reflection, try to find what are you happy about yourself with doing, and maybe what could you work on, but
Yes.
taking the time to do that was a helpful
Yes.
action.
Yes. I kept on repositioning myself because I also mentioned like how I started off like, research and the content, and I started thinking, okay, funny enough, during this search, I got a another interview, which I thought was really good because it was growth marketing, but then it was going to be a lot of experimentation, a lot of research, a lot of like implementation. Because I thought, okay, let me even try like anything that has to do with data, research. Let me do that. And then I remember in that interview, they told me they were one of the few people that gave me feedback, and they said your energy was really good. You seemed really curious and creative, but this role is not going to allow you be creative at all. You're just going to be doing a lot of experimenting and a lot of implementation. So we really think that you seem like a very creative person, and this role might not necessarily be for you. And then I think that was where I now started saying, okay, let me focus more on the content, the marketing roles. I That really gave me some insight. So I think it was really looking at what people had to say, the feedback, and then just looking inward, like where would I be the most comfortable and be happy to wake up every day and go to work. And I just found that it was in marketing and it was in creating content. So I just went for that.
Content marketing. Yeah, and it requires analytics as well. Like
Yes, exactly.
it's on both ends, sort of how you come up with the idea, and then how is it working for that audience.
Exactly.
So that's wonderful. So here's another typical job interview question. We're going to put you on the spot. What's a brand or an organization that you look up to or you think does good marketing?
Okay. I have a few, but funny enough, my favorite brand in the whole world in terms of marketing is Netflix. Why? It goes back to the same thing I keep on talking about in terms of content marketing and analytics. Like I've gotten so much inspiration from them because of how they've been able to really understand the different buckets of audiences that they have and create tailored content to those audiences. And then not only that, the way they advertise it, like they're very witty on social media. I follow some of their social media platforms and not just the like Netflix, but like for instance, the Netflix Nigeria. And the way they communicate their messaging is just so funny. So like they have very creative ways of getting really funny parts of the shows that they're advertising and just being able to connect with their target audience. For instance, I saw just I think yesterday or day before yesterday, where they they were advertising Top Boy, which is like a British um a black British show, and they were talking. So it was Netflix Nigeria, and then they reposted one from Netflix Ghana, and then it was just saying something like Top Boy streaming now. But what Netflix Nigeria said was something very short and witty. It was just like say no more, cause. And the reason why I like that was because that is how they speak in Top Boy. Like those are the kind of slangs that they use. Like they're always saying things like cause, like those kind of slangs. So they are able to really understand the brands or the character speak of every sort of their shows and look for what is really popular, what's going to engage their target audience, and then communicate that in a way that is really true to the brand. So yeah, that's like one brand that I'm very, very passionate about. And I also like some of their partnerships, like the way they partnered with Ben and Jerry's, etc. But yeah, like another brand again is like Aldo. I like Aldo because of their brand partnerships as well. I like brands that are able to like see synergies with other brands and then really communicate it well. Like they did Aldo and Disney, Aldo and Barbie. Like those things are really, interesting to me. So yeah, but Netflix is number one.
So for your second brand, did you say Aldo?
Yes,
Like the shoe company?
yeah.
Oh, okay. I was like, I was just a little bit surprised. I hadn't, and with everything Barbie this recent summer, I didn't actually see that. Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I'm always in the stores. Like I always see like their communications like in their stores. So that just like piqued my attention. Like the first time that I got interested in Aldo was with Disney because they had like these glass slippers that were like Cinderella slippers, and they had a partnership with Disney. So I was like, this is so good, like the way
Yeah.
they really got this. And then I saw how they did it with Barbie as well, and they just continue to infuse those different elements. And yeah, I think that's like really creative marketing.
It's smart when they do that. All right. So yeah, Netflix and Aldo. I love it because I love this question because it's nice when you hear answers that people don't typically say. There's certain brands that are always mentioned, and Netflix and Aldo are not ones that are on my list, or I've heard many times, but I'm going to actually now take a look as well and just keep
Yes,
an eye on them.
very interesting. But what about you? I was going to like also say like, what about you? What are your favorites?
My favorite brand is Patagonia, the
Mm.
outdoor clothing company.
Oh.
I I love that, like, they have stayed there. There's a lot of conversation around sustainability and, I guess, and
Mm.
clothing and fashion, whether you consider Patagonia fashionable, whatever. But they own
Mm.
really trying to minimize their footprint while understanding they're in this industry and walk that balance.
Yes.
But I love how they started as like a socially minded brand with their founder, and they've continued to weave that into everything that they do. Their messaging about
Mm.
not buying less. They have a program where you can send in your torn products and they will sew it up. They have
Oh, wow.
workshops. They
Yeah.
have content on how to fix your clothes, not to buy more. So
Yes.
everything about what Patagonia does is based on this care for quality of product,
Mm.
and for hopefully to have lessen the impact on the planet. So that's That's one of my favorite ones. And they do great content. They still do catalogs, printed catalogs that do a
Oh,
really good job of storytelling and mixing product in. So
definitely gonna look into.
yeah, it's paper and online.
Yeah.
I do like when brands, paper still uses resources,
Yes.
but when they use when they use a catalog intelligently,
Mm-hmm.
I think it can help brands stand out
Yes.
using a offline type of method. So
Exactly.
that's mine. Thank you
Love.
for asking. Let's bring some lessons forward here and some things that you've learned along the way. So another typical job interview question is, tell us about a time you might have made a mistake or something didn't work out. Share something like that, the common rookie mistake that you might have made.
A common rookie mistake, I would say jumping into things. So I'm someone that once I see something, I want to quickly go into it, and it hasn't really worked well because of the kind of jobs that I've been doing. They have been because you have to put your eyes on a lot of things, so you need to sort of slow down to be able to speed up. And that was one of my mentors said.
I love
So
that. Slow down to speed up. That's going to
yes,
be our hot take.
yes, yes, yeah. So I got that for one of my mentors, and it was because one mistake that I made was, for instance, someone said something about, like, they were congratulating someone in our organization, and because of the way I read things, especially because of Slack, like, it's so quick, it's so, there's always so much information going on. Instead, I didn't like read it very well, so I think I just read that, oh, something is happening, and it was a big thing, like it was an award, and I was already saying congrats to the person, already trying to create content, like the person that said it, but she was talking about someone else. So I was already starting to congratulate her, and then, like, looking at how I could, like, pretty much um advertise, like, the award, and then something just told me to go back to the message and look at what she said again. I don't know why, but I just decided, okay, let me go back. And then I realized that it wasn't even her she was talking about. She was talking about another person. So I had to start going back and redoing everything. But I was able to catch that quickly and just say, oh yeah, congrats, and pretty much make up for it. But it taught me a huge lesson in really, like, really not being affected by biases. And like that was, we spoke a little bit about that. Like, that was something that I actually learned from your class, which was like the pitfalls and the biases that we sort of fall into. Like, you think that like, when you see like, when I see some messages, sometimes I just quickly get I really think that I know what the person is talking about, but you really need to sometimes slow down so you can see all of the information that is being given to you, and then tackle how you're going to solve it. So it goes back to attention to detail. It goes back to, yeah, just taking time to understand things very well.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. This idea of biases, and we talk about it in the context of analysis for marketing, because a lot of conversation around analysis tends to get I'm quite quantitative,
Yeah,
and there's this promise of big data and AI and machine learning and all of this making decisions for us, but the analysis still goes through you and through
yeah,
me, and we all have different pressures in our day to day. Maybe we just got promoted, maybe we're having a good year, maybe we're having a bad year, and that will shape those biases that we have, will shape the decisions that we make with the data. I'm glad that lesson kind of stuck, because it's an important thing, especially for folks working in marketing. And if you are more analytically minded,
mm,
to try to be aware of some of these, what's biasing your decision making.
yeah, yeah.
So one final question here, Lau. What is your like mic drop moment, a piece of advice or a pro tip for somebody who's working towards their day one in marketing?
So I think curiosity has helped me go a long way. Just asking yourself, really, what do you want to do and why? And then just trying to see what other people are doing and what they have to say. Because marketing, like I would have probably explained a lot here, is very broad and it's requires, a level of decisiveness so that you don't like you don't kind of end up doing things that you are not really very happy about. So I think being curious goes a long way, and then being able to learn from other people can help you, make your own decisions. Like we talked about, do you want to go to agency? Do you want to go to brand side? Just actually having the courage to reach out to people or just see what's happening online, because right now there's just so much information. So there's so much to learn from, and you would definitely need that. You definitely need to be on top of that, like always following trends, always, wanting to know. So having that zeal, that passion for knowledge, I think goes a long way. And then asking yourself why you want to be in this role. Like think about like what parts of the role, so what tasks would you be very interested to do on a day to day, and why can help you start to frame the answers that you give during interview questions. So just picture yourself in that role and think about what are the things that will really bring a spark to your day and what are things that would deplete you, and then go from there. So it all stems down to curiosity.
I don't want to turn it into like being a marketing nerd, but it almost sounds like you're talking about the funnel. Like you need to start broad, but it's like curiosity. You need to be curious, but then decisive.
Yes. Yes.
Because if you just stay curious, you're always going to be at the top of the funnel and not get
Exactly.
yourself to that
Exactly.
end, that day one. It'll be a longer journey for you.
Exactly. Exactly. So being curious, and then, being like you said, it's just being decisive, and then yeah, that would take you there, because then you understand your own story, and then you'll be able to understand why you align with those brands, their values and their mission. So
Totally. How do you help solve the problem that they
well,
have, which is they have a job they're trying to hire someone for?
exactly.
Lau, it's wonderful to chat with you. Thank you very much for investing your time with the Year One community. Before you go, let people know where they can find out more about you, see your work, and what you're sharing online. I know you have a website, which we haven't talked about, so this might be a great place to give that a little bit of a
Put
plug.
that in. Yes, people can definitely find out more about me at my website, astoldbylayo.com, where I just talk about some of these things that I've mentioned, like positive growth, mental health tips. And they can also look out for me on LinkedIn as well, Morolayo Folami on LinkedIn, if you want to connect with me one on one.
Awesome. And we'll make sure folks get those links in the show notes. So remember, friends, getting a job, any job, isn't necessarily easy, but there's definitely a role out there for you. And with good folks like Layo and myself, we're here to help you get it. So thanks for joining us, and look forward to seeing you next time.